Strider has not had a 3-up, 3-down inning in this game. Castellanos now with 2 away. Castellanos, high fly ball, way back, goodbye. 1-2 the count. And did he go? He did! It's over! The Philadelphia Phillies are headed back to the National League Championship Series.
Welcome to episode number 76 of the Broad Street Hustle podcast. I will be your host tonight, Jason Sayeda. And what an action-packed podcast we have tonight. We're going to start with the Phillies-Braves. And wow, what a gut-wrenching series that was. Came out smelling like roses, but it was not fun at times. We'll then preview the Phillies-Diamondbacks series and also do a quick Rangers-Astros preview. We'll then jump to the Eagles-Rams, review that game, and then also preview the upcoming Eagles-Jets game this week. We'll review our prior week bets and stats, and we'll have a special momentous happening to unveil during those stat reviews. And then finally, we'll handicap Week 6 of the NFL. So Tommy can't join us tonight, but we do have our other co-host. The first is Jimmy the Chalk. What's going on, Jim?
I'm glad there's a couple days between games because I couldn't go for tomorrow if they had to play.
Yes, there were times I thought I was going to need a heart defibrillator last night, but got through it. And then we have our other co-host, Chris Meeker. What is going on, Meeker?
Yeah, what works, Chalky, is bourbon. Bourbon works in times like that.
Well, listen, I don't want to be judged, but of the 4 games, the 3 games the Phillies won are the ones I was drinking during. So maybe I have to figure that out for the rest of the
and
season.
a support dog by your side. Support dog bourbon.
I'll have to keep that in mind when I'm reading your text to kind of figure out which one of you.
I don't go above and beyond, but I didn't. Okay. The dogs I used to scare. Dogless now, but they used to get scared when I would yell at the TV.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into it. And I guess where do we start with this Phillies-Braves series? I'll throw it to you, Chalky. Take it where you want.
I mean, all 4 of us homers or not picked the Phillies to win. Three of us said it would be in 4, and Meeker had 5. I've been saying since we started making predictions at whatever point that I thought the Phillies would go back to the World Series. So I'm not surprised that they beat the Braves. I guess in the way it ended up happening was a little surprising in that, and Jason, you had texted me, and I think you mentioned it even on one of the other episodes, is that, you said you're going to need pitching to have to beat the Braves, and you thought Milwaukee was the only team that could do that. And it turns out that the Phillies, turned out to be the team, that could silence those bats. And I don't know, certainly back in August, if we would have had the faith in Nola and Suarez coming in and pitching the way they did. And, Wheeler, I really don't blame Wheeler for the Darno home run. He should not have been in the game. We were talking about it separately. I would have taken him out after the 6th. So he would have been 1 run in 6 innings, there. But they're starting pitching, and their bullpen was it was up and down as a roller coaster for your heart, like you said. But I mean, they were extremely solid. Aside from Hoffman gave up the home run right to Riley in game 2, and on the flip side, we were worried about getting past the Atlanta starters in some of the games, and they made him throw pitches, and Strider only gave up 2 runs in game 1, but they didn't score. And then last night was 3 runs on the solo shots. I mean, I don't think Strider pitched bad. I mean, last night he was gassing it till the end, right? And we thought
three solo home runs. I mean, you can't really blame him.
No.
I mean, Castellanos was hitting 100-mile-per-hour pitches.
Castellanos' first home run was inside a little bit, and it was 101 down the middle of the plate, but I mean, he caught up to it. I would say the Turner home run was maybe not a good pitch, and Elder we didn't think Elder would hold up, but the Phillies didn't really do any damage to the Braves bullpen. Now they didn't have to in the end. I mean, they did in Game 3 with Smith, Schwarber, Schuster, whatever his name is, came in and they got him.
Over,
but they had given up, and he pitched 4 innings, right?
Yeah.
So they did enough damage. Their starters held up enough, and they were leaving with the leads. And they won close games. 2 of the 3 games they won were low scoring games, 3-1, 3-0. I don't think we expected them to win the series like that. And you know, I was concerned that the way the Braves came back and won Game 2 could be a little bit of a shift, not because the Phillies couldn't beat them, but because if it would be like a 2-1 game, it would have been like, whatever. But the fact that the Phillies are up 4-0 and left a million guys on base, and then the Braves, you know, they scored 5 runs. Are the floodgates finally open? They shut them out for the first 14 innings of the series. Now are they going to start hitting? And they didn't. So, you know, we thought they'd win in 4, but I don't know if this is the exact layout that any of us were really predicting as to how it might happen.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I guess we all kind of figured that they would, the best way to get to win the series was to at least split in Atlanta. I didn't think they would win the first game. I thought they'd win the second, but, you know, turns out they should have won both, but it's neither here nor there at this point. Meeker, what do you think?
I'm just like, I'm so, what's the word I want to use? The determination of the team is what I'm so impressed by. You know, to come back from that game that they lost, which everyone was like, oh, this could be a series changer, you know, to lose like they did in Game 2 and to come back home and just dominate Game 3 and win like they did in Game 4. It just speaks to the determination of this team. And, you know, we've had a lot of criticism like during the year of Thompson and his pitching moves. And he even admitted last night that, you know, what he decided to do, bringing Alvarado in early in the game and bringing Kimbrel in much earlier than, you know, he would have wanted to, was very unorthodox. And I thought, and we were texting back and forth, he's going to put himself in a hole in these later innings. But somehow, some way, you know, they got out of it. I was
just going to say the one thing I'll throw in there is we always kind of, and I know I've heard you say, like, you don't like to see managers like managed by the book, right? And I think he totally did not manage by the book last night, right? Because you managed by the book. In the 6th inning, you're bringing in Hoffman, right?
Yep.
In the 7th inning, you're bringing in, you know, whoever. In the 8th inning, you're bringing in Alvarado. In the 9th inning, you're bringing in Kimbrel. And he totally, and I'll be the first to admit, and you guys could look at my text, I probably disagreed with almost everything he did last night leading up to it. And he was right on everything. The one thing I think he was wrong with, and he got away with it, was bringing Soto back out in that 9th inning last night. I think was a total mistake.
Big time.
Should have started that inning with Strahm. And Strahm came in and just did an amazing job. But
yeah, if you weren't going to a righty from Soto, I would just bring Strahm in because it's still lefty, and
he's just too wild. Soto, he's not
sitting,
dependable.
You know, for the 8th, bottom of the 8th, yeah, I would have just brought Strahm in.
And I don't want us to dwell on any of the negatives, obviously, because, you know, the positives way outweigh the negatives. But I had said on a few podcasts back, and I said, look, you know, when you're in the playoffs, high leverage situations may exist at any point in the game. And that high leverage situation happened to be the 5th inning when he brought Alvarado in, or 6th inning. And, you know, he made the right move. We both texted saying, you know, this is the right move, but I don't love bringing him in this early. And, you know, he got away with it because, you know, that's what he knew the matchup. He knew what he needed to do, and he needed to waste. I don't want to use the word waste, but he needed to use Alvarado a little early in the game. But it worked out for him. I mean, back and forth with the post game, Ben Davis and Ricky were talking about, like, it's almost like impossible for 2 games in a 5-game series for you to throw out 6 relievers in 2 different games and have those 6 relievers come through. It's, you know, when you have 6 relievers coming in a game, one of them is bound to have an off night. And although they didn't really give up any runs, they didn't pitch like Soto, for instance, and Alvarado with the walks and Kimbrel with the wild pitch. They didn't pitch flawlessly, but they got through those situations. And it's just uncanny, that happened in 2 different games in this series. And that was the difference between them losing this last game, at least, especially.
It's funny, last night, like they're bringing the guys in, and like each reliever had a real good, like 2 or 3 hitters, like their first 2 or 3 hitters, they were good. And then that was it. That was it. Right. And then, so like Alvarado gets the out, comes back in, that sudden it's hit walk. And then Kimbrel comes in and gets out of that, gets another couple outs. And then he gets, so it was, again, most relievers aren't going to pitch more than an inning, like, straight. You're not, and bridging the innings is what, not so much the choices other than Soto. Bridging the innings is what worries me the most in those cases, because the relievers sitting. If you're a starting pitcher, you're going to sit all the time in between innings. The relievers aren't. So unless you're coming in and throwing one pitch, in that case, I say, maybe leave the guy in. But the sitting, constantly breaking it up like that is what worried me last night more than anything else.
Well, they certainly weren't going to. They're certainly not going to put Alvarado back out there after pitching like whatever it was, 5 pitches in that inning. He was just there matching, but you knew he was going to start the following inning.
Here's my theory on that, though. And this is why I don't like it, whether it's the guy comes in and throws 3 pitches or he comes in and throws 12 pitches. When you're coming out of the bullpen, you got the adrenaline, you got the music playing, you just warmed up, you're pumped, this is what these guys are used to. These guys are like all programmed this way, right? You come in, you do your job, get out of the inning. Now you go sit in the dugout, and especially in a longer inning, you're sitting in that dugout, now you got to come back out. And again, whether you just threw 5 pitches or you just threw 15 pitches, I don't like it. I don't like it. And Alvarado kind of proved that last night, and Kimbrel kind of proved it last night, and Soto proved it last night. That it's like they'll come in and do the job, but then after they're sitting, then it gets hairy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either, but it seemed as though that he played more of the matchup in the middle of an inning to get out of the inning, and then
I'd rather him just start fresh the next inning with a new pitcher. Then
he had to do the same thing inning after inning, to bridge the innings, like Talkie was saying, to get through the game. And it worked out. I mean, like, I was shaking my head last night at how it worked out, but it did work out. But the bottom line of it all is, look, the Braves were, the best. Their stats were the best in like 60 years or whatever.
One of the best hitting teams of all time.
In 60 years, right? They scored 8 runs in 4 games. Mm-hmm. They're not going to win against this Phillies team when you score 8 runs in 4 games. And, they kept Acuna at bay. I mean, Riley had his moments. Olsen, they kept him in the park. They did pretty much everything they needed to against the bigger bats in that lineup. And, and here we are. Now we're going to the NLCS.
They shot every guy down except Riley. I mean, come on. Acuna did nothing.
Harris didn't have a hit.
Almost. Harris was terrible. Olsen was terrible.
He was.
The only guy that hit them was Riley. And Riley had good numbers against those pitchers. So we kind of said it on the podcast last week that Riley's going to be the problem if anybody's going to be a problem. And he was. But that wasn't enough. I was thinking to myself last night, I mean, Castellanos has to be the MVP of the series, right? But then you go back and you think of Meeker's comment where they gave up 8 runs. Yes, maybe he is the MVP of the series, but, you also have to give it to Wheeler and Nola and Suarez.
Yep.
Like those guys.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched the post game last night on TBS. Probably not. Well, Jason probably went to bed, I'm thinking, but
I recorded it and watched it today.
There you go. Good thinking, right?
Not TBS though. I watched the home.
Okay, no. So I wasn't moving off the couch because I was juiced up. So I was watching it, and like I guess Pedro Martinez does "Who's My Daddy" after the game or something like that. And so like the choices were Castellanos, Suarez, Rob Thompson, and somebody else. Or Turner, I think, from last night, because Turner went 4 for 4. And so he actually went with Thompson because of making the right moves. And then I'm like, oh, well, Castellanos is a slam dunk, right? Because 2 home runs. I'm like, well, Turner did it. That's like, well, yeah, Thompson made the moves and Suarez. I mean, I think it has to be Castellanos. And then I'll say not because he's the first player in playoff history to hit 2 home runs in back-to-back games. I think his his first home run in both games was in the bottom of the inning where they gave up a run. So it was boom, come right back. Okay, so any momentum that was shifting right back. And then obviously last night it was the insurance run. But I mean, until last night, like if Harper gets another RBI or something last night, obviously Harper is in the conversation. Take your big money guys, right? You pay these guys the big bucks to be the stars at this time of year. And you go down your list, Harper, Turner, even Wheeler. I'll give Wheeler credit because Wheeler pitched, a no-hitter into the sixth and should have got out of that with maybe no runs or just one. Real Muto had a decent series. Schwarber's the first guy you come across and like, he didn't really do anything. He hasn't really shown up yet in the playoffs other than almost hitting it out in the first pitch of the series. So your big money guys are making the plays. And then you got a guy like Ranger who's coming in as your third starter, and he's giving you whatever you need. And it's Castellanos is going to be the star of the series, but it's not like it was a complete slam dunk, like he's above and away everybody else. I think there's a lot of guys that you certainly have in the conversation just by looking at the numbers.
Yeah, to win series like this, especially against the best team in baseball, or we're the best team in the regular season, you have to get contributions from everybody, and they did. They got contributions up and down the lineup, defensively, offensively, pitching, bullpen, Thompson. You can go down the list there, and that's what it takes. That's what it takes to win in the playoffs. And the Braves did not.
Yeah, they were by far the best team. They were the better team, so they deserved the win. Couple of things I wanted to bring up. So a couple of intriguing plays or things that happened during the series. So the game one Turner double play. I was just trying to think back in my memory bank of key defensive plays, throughout the years of Phillies, playoff baseball. A couple of plays came to mind, and I wanted to see if you guys had any other plays that come to mind for you. But, I would guess, another one just came to mind as I'm thinking, but the first one is Utley fake throw in the World Series against Tampa Bay, and then, throwing a guy out at home. The Pete Rose, this is before your time, Chalky, but Meeker remembers the Pete Rose catching Bob Boone.
Yep.
Flubbing the pop-up.
I have the autograph picture. I'll have to put it up behind me maybe if they get to the World Series, but yeah.
Another one, obviously this didn't lead to much, but it led to a, monumental game, was Ruiz getting the swinging bunt of Phillips to end the Halladay no-hitter.
Yeah.
I thought those are three plays that you'll never forget. Anything else come to mind for you guys?
For me, I was present when the Phils won the NL East, won the double play.
Yeah.
Rollins to Utley, and Rollins made it.
I was there too. I was in the box. I was against Washington, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's almost a carbon copy. I don't know if you guys saw the comparison videos.
But that wasn't playoff stuff.
No, but the play itself was almost a carbon copy of that.
It was a big game because Phillies had to have the Mets lose, and they were getting beat 7-0 in the second inning by the Marlins. And the fans knew that if they won that game, they were going to clinch the division. And that play by Rollins got them into, basically they won the division on that play. I remember that play. It just comes to mind right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Saturday afternoon, against Washington. I remember watching at my grandfather's house, and he's like, "What are you getting excited about?" I'm like, "They just won the division." He's like a huge Phillies fan. He's like, "I'm too old to jump out of my chair anymore." Yeah. But yeah. So one thing, I guess, and it was compared to, well, you know what, the Rojas catch. I'll say, that's good. That's it. Depending on what they do, that's going to be a memory for folks, I think, coming out of this series, perhaps. Victorino made a very similar catch in the Dodgers series. Yeah. Victorino made a similar catch in Game 2 against the Dodgers in 2008. And then the one I saw, because it was like 30 years ago the other day, was Milt Thompson had a catch in the 8th inning of Game 4 against Atlanta in 93. That kept the winning run off the board. And then, so as far as playoffs, those are a couple ones that come to mind, right away.
I'm gonna throw one at Meeker and see if he remembers this. And I was at this game as well. I believe it was game Now, the 83 NLCS, was that a 5-game series? I think it was against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Right? The clinching game, which I was there. Do you remember the ball that was hitting the right field corner where Sixto didn't get to the corner? It got like it hit the cutoff before it went to the corner, and he kind of like slid on his knee to get it, and then he got up firing and threw the guy out at second base.
I recall a really great throw by Lezcano in the playoffs. I also recall a great play in left field by Gary Matthews. I don't know if that was in the World. It wasn't in the World Series, so they kind of got beat pretty quickly in the World Series. I think it was in the NLCS. He made a really great play against the wall. Against the Dodgers.
I don't remember that one. Yeah.
And then after he caught it, he actually flipped. After he caught it, he hit the wall and then did a somersault. It was the last out of the inning. He did a somersault, showed the ball up. I remember that play.
Yeah, I kind of remember it, but I don't recall the placing of it. But I remember him doing something like that.
Speaking of also, I think it's gotten some press about the play itself, or last night, but I don't think it really got enough mention. Is what is Pilar doing not scoring on that wild pitch? He has to read that and score. Yeah. And I think the game changes if he scores there. It makes it 3-2. If it ends up being still 3-2 going into the ninth inning.
They probably tie the game in the ninth because they only have to get that run home from third.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all they need to do. And I'm not saying no one talked about it, but that is a big blunder. And again,
yeah, I was trying to look when they're replaying it. I couldn't tell if Acuna was telling him to hold or if Acuna was waving him home. Like the camera angle that they were showing was like too far back, and you see him
at
waving
the end,
his hand.
He was telling him to hold.
Okay, so he did tell him to hold. So I would say like he was there getting the read on it. Like if he's telling Pilar to stop, then I'm not going to fault Pilar as much because he's looking for him to get a cue. But yeah, I mean that now it's the go at the tying runs on third because everybody else was ready to they almost got what's his name at first because everybody the second they were ready to go, and then maybe it shakes up. I forget who was even on the mound at that point. Was it Kimbrel or
yeah.
Maybe that's right because the fly ball the Rojas catch was next.
Yeah, I will say that it wasn't a slam dunk that he was scoring because the ball did bounce off it caromed off the wall.
Got lucky.
He probably was scoring because Kimbrel was
on that bounce.
I mean,
he would have had JT would have had to have a perfect throw to Kimbrel, and it would have been bang bang play at the plate. Probably would have scored, but
I understand the logic that the announcers were saying was like if you're not 100% sure, you don't go there because now you're potentially taking the bat out of Acuna's hand, and I get that. And he almost hit a game changing double or whatever if Rojas doesn't get there, But yeah, I was like, as soon as that hit, I was like, this is going to be now it's 3-2, and so when he stopped, I was like, what? I thought Dusty Watham was at third base for a minute, but
yeah, right. Jeez. All right, so one last thing before we move on from the series is we can't let the Arcia whole controversy go without commenting. Chalky, what are your thoughts on that whole mess? That
I mean, I'm not going to say that the Phillies needed that, but I mean, if there was any doubt in their mind, okay, you just blew a 4-0 lead against a team that if they finish that game off, there is no chance Atlanta's taking 2 games here. 0 chance. You're coming out 1-1. Maybe they get one somehow if something goes wrong. But, Harper obviously took it to heart and, got out. And then I guess the whole, when we've talked about it, on air and off, is Atlanta really a mentally tough team? And their reactions after game 3, which was, we're kind of mad it got out. And it's just go play the game. I'm sure Harper didn't need that motivation, but it's okay, look, hey, they came out, they beat us, we'll move on. So the complaining about that, and I mean, obviously, and then you see the way he was acting in the dugout last night, the fans going at it, whatever, they were in his head. And that just, I mean, and these are guys that won a World Series 2 years ago, whatever, but there just wasn't a real strong mental makeup with some of these guys, I guess. And I think, I'm not going to say it's what tipped the series back in the way of the Phillies, but it was, I think it was definitely a factor that kind of got them a little juiced up for game 3. And, somebody else made a point that I saw is some teams might have gotten down if they're blowing that lead, but, and it was meant as a compliment. there's not enough brain cells in the locker room to realize that they did a really bad thing by losing that game. So they just forgot about it and moved on. So
that's true.
it's just, I mean, it's just the whining and everything, and like the journal. Oh, well, they shouldn't have reported that. It's like, look, my old professor from LaSalle was getting into it with some people. It's like, if you think that it's not on the journalist shouldn't be reporting that, then you've never taken a real journalism class. So, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, if I read a couple of things and I think I sent it to you guys, like, there's enough activity going on for them. If, they had to know that somebody was going to overhear this, and it might be leaked. I mean, it wasn't like there was one guy hiding in the corner and they didn't know he was there and he heard it. Like, there was a bunch of reporters around and stuff. But I think obviously he shouldn't have said it if he couldn't back it up. But then I think once he said it, I think he handled it wrong when they asked him about it after. He should have just brushed it off. He should have just said, I have no comment on that. That's all he should have said. He shouldn't have said, oh, it wasn't meant to be heard and stuff like that. Because now it looks like now you're kind of worried that it got heard or something like that. And it definitely, I don't care what anybody says, and I said it to you guys, like, that's the wrong MF for to kind of, mess with. And he used that. Definitely.
Yeah. On the heels of exactly what you're saying. I mean, you look at the best team sport athletes of all time, your Tom Brady's, your Michael Jordan's, your Kobe's. You can't give a guy like that any kind of motivation.
Yeah.
They'll take any little thing, something like this, and make it into what he made it. You don't want to poke the bear, and they really poked the bear, and the bear bit them right in the ass.
Yeah.
And it's just the wrong. I mean, I know that he didn't think it was going to get out, but it's still the wrong thing to say when you're in a room of a bunch of reporters, because it's bound to get out.
Sure.
And with today's social media and phones and everything in the locker room, you're like, everything gets out, So, and if they needed any more of any kind of motivation, the Braves gave it to them. That's the way I look at it.
Yep. All right. Well, that was a pretty good synopsis, I thought, of that series. So let's move on. Let's move on to this Braves series. I'm sorry, the Diamondback series, and I will start with I'll start with Meeker here. And I know we kind of very briefly kind of touched on it a little bit through text today, but what are you thinking?
Oh, on everything, when you're doing a preview of a series, you're looking at, okay, on paper, who is the better team? And of course, we'd say the better team on paper would have been the Dodgers. They should have beat Arizona, right? But that didn't happen. So on paper, you look at this matchup and you're saying Phillies should sweep this team, but they're coming in with a lot of confidence. They're coming in with, just coming off the heels of beating a division rival. They have two top of the rotation starters that are really good. They have a bullpen that's okay. I mean, if you look at the stats, okay. I was looking at, and something we did in the last podcast when we were analyzing the Braves series, looking at some of the Phillies hitters versus Gallen and Kelly. So Phillies on average hit 232 against Gallen. Now it's not a big sample size because, they don't play Arizona all the time. But they're not killing him, obviously. They're hitting 232 and Kelly in 288. Now the big sample size with Kelly is Turner because Turner played in Arizona's division. So he's got a little more at bats, and he's hitting 429 against Kelly. So I think he's key in the game they play against Kelly. To me, it really comes down to this, and their bullpen is really nothing to be, to jump up and down about. I think they have an okay bullpen, but
they've been pitching well.
They're pitching well right now, but their bullpen isn't like lights out. It's the same kind of. I'm looking at this series almost the same way as the Braves. Now, the Braves, we had to get Strider. We got Strider twice in that series. In this series, you have Gallen and Kelly. So you have two. And Fried, we thought that the Phillies could hit him. And I'm not saying Fried's a bad pitcher. He's a good pitcher. But we had a feeling that they would get to him. So in the same vein, I'm thinking like, okay, if we get one against Gallen, we win one game against Gallen, I think that they win the series. All they need to do is beat him once. because after Gallen and Kelly, I don't know who they're going to throw out there. I mean, if they're going to start Fott. I know it's going to be home because that'll be game 3, right? It won't be here, but if he was here, he would just get destroyed, I think. But he's a rookie. He had a pretty good start against the Dodgers the last time out, but overall, he didn't have a very good season. I don't think he's really ready for this. And after that, if they go to like a bullpen game in their 4th game, I think that's big trouble. So I think they beat the rookie. I think they beat that, they're going to win that bullpen game. They just need to get one on Gallen. I think it's going to be shorter series, and I want to say it might go 6, but I'm actually going to predict it's going to go 5. When it comes to the Diamondbacks lineup against the Phillies pitchers, they do hit Wheeler, like you were saying earlier today, Jason, when we were talking about it. 2 guys that hit him pretty well are Christian Walker and Marte. Walker is hitting .529 lifetime against Wheeler. That's pretty good. And Marte's hitting .400. They hit .229 against Nola.
Pham also
hits .455, against him. Yeah. Nola, they're .229. No one really hits him that hard, so Nola's,
Jake McCarthy hits him.
Okay. So no one really they haven't crushed Nola. Again, it's a smaller sample size because these guys don't really pitch against Arizona too often. But to me, if you're looking at like the lineup, you have like guys that are not so much the same position players, but guys that are very similar players in their lineup. Like Carroll is kind of like their Turner, right? Walker is kind of like their Castellanos. Marte is kind of like their Bohm. So there's like very similar statistical categories that you can kind of compare these guys. But in the end, they don't have a guy like Bryce Harper. They just don't have that guy, and the experience, everything you want to talk about. Like the big thing for me is, the power difference between the Phillies lineup and Arizona's lineup and the experience that we have. They're both motivated. Like if you're not motivated going into the NLCS, can't say the Phillies are more motivated. Yeah, they beat the better team. But in the end, I think it's going to be a short series. Phillies just have less holes in their lineup. And I think that the starting rotation is lengthier, for the Phillies. So I think they win in about, I'm going to say 5. And I think they win in 5 games.
Excuse me. The one thing I'll add in with Gallen is his splits home and away are very, very different. He is a different pitcher at home than he is away. He's a great pitcher. Like he's untouchable at home. So from what I saw is I believe the projection is he's going to pitch games 1, 4, and then hopefully there's not a 7, but he would pitch game 7. The one thing I'll add though is he's from here. So, game 1 here might not be a typical road game for him. So, I'll let Chalky go next, but then I'll kind of follow up with my thoughts. They're slightly different than yours, Meeker, but go ahead, Chalky.
That's interesting. So they would run Gallen back on 3 days rest for game 4.
Now I heard that somewhere, and I don't believe it was from Lavello, but I did hear it somewhere that the projection was he's going to pitch 1, 4, and 7. It might have been High Heat, Russo show.
So, I mean, some similar thoughts to Meeker. I mean, when I was, looking at him and, they kind of came across as like Atlanta light to me. They two decent pitchers, obviously at the top end. They got guys with pop, Carroll in some ways is an Acuna light. He's a 25-50 guy instead of 40-70. You got infielders that are hitting 25 home runs. You got a first baseman that's 30 plus home runs. They don't have a third baseman like Riley.
The left side of the rim.
Longoria is a little old in the tooth. So I said last week Phillies in 5. I'm adjusting that. I'm gonna say Phillies in 7. I think this could go a little longer, and I think they'll split. Well, this is before I was seeing, Jason saying Gallen might pitch 3 games, but I think they'll split. So if it goes 7, I think they're splitting 2 and 2 between the 4 games that Gallen and Kelly pitch against Nola and Wheeler, and then they take 2 of the 3 games that they wouldn't. Now, if Gallen's going to come back on short rest, I don't know. That would make me a little. I mean, he's not pitching during the season like that, so this would be his first time in the big leagues. I guess, trying to do that. The question I have, I guess, is, and I don't know if Dave Thompson has said anything about this yet. So Suarez obviously had a quick hook in game 1 and game 4. He was only going to go so far through the lineup. If he's your third starter, he's pitching on Thursday, and they have games the next 2 days. So is he going to be given more leeway if he's pitching all right? Because in both of his games, they had an off day if they had to empty out the bullpen. Now they don't have that luxury. So is the leash going to be longer with him against this lineup as opposed to the Braves? Because I don't know if you can use the same strategy, even if you hope Walker eats innings the next day or whoever's going to be the starter.
See, here's what I think in that regard. I think they are going to use the same strategy, but they're not going to use as many relievers. I think this is where Lorenzen's going to come into play, right, in game 3, and I think Sanchez will come into play in game 4, because then you'll go lefty-righty, righty-lefty, right? And then this way, now you don't have to worry about depleting your bullpen in those games. So I think you're going to see these guys now in this series where you didn't see them so far.
Where I think the Phillies have a little advantage with that is because of a lot of, dichotomy with the right and left in their bullpen. Look at the Arizona bullpen; they don't have a whole lot of that. Most of their better bullpen pitchers are right-handed. They have like one good left-handed pitcher in the bullpen. So I don't think that, again, when it comes to the depth of the bullpen, I think that's a big plus for the Phils because they have that much. They can play those matchups where Arizona probably cannot.
Yeah.
We're going to need their start.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit when we thought they might get Arizona in the wild card round on 3 games, and they just don't have the left-handed arms. They're all bullpen arms to begin with, like Meeker's saying, but they're not even like.
If you want to try to beat the Phillies, I think you want to be left-handed dominant to try to beat the Phillies because you want to, negate Schwarber, who I think Schwarber is going to step up in this series, and obviously Harper. But so Meeker, you went through and you said you looked at some stats, pitchers versus hitters. The one guy you didn't mention, which I think is key, is they also hit Suarez pretty hard. If you look at Marte and Walker again, and even Perdomo have good stats against Suarez. So
small sample size, but yeah,
small sample size, but they hit him. So, to me, this is not going to be an easy series. I think the Diamondbacks are young and stupid. They don't even know what they're into right now. They just went in and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're 5-0, right?
They're 5-0, yeah.
They swept the Brewers and swept the Dodgers. Dodgers are obviously a choke team, but
we didn't see that. Like game 1, I'm just like, oh great, Phillies just stole game 1. I blink and it's 6-0 in the first inning on Kershaw.
And they ambushed him.
And that's the thing. That inning, was it the whatever inning it was in game 3 where they hit the 4 home runs in a row. They weren't putting up ones and ones and ones. They had a big number in a couple of those games, and that was it. Even again, some of the comebacks against the Brewers. So if you can mitigate that, they scored in bunches in these 5 games. So if you can limit them to 1 run, like they did with the Braves, for the 2 home games at least, 1 run here, 1 run there, you're hanging in it. But they're a powder keg, and if you set the match off, they can put 4 on you real quick if you're not careful. So they just, gotta be cautious.
So since it's a 2-3-2 format, my official prediction is the Phillies will win in 6. Now, I am leaning more towards Chalky than I am Meeker. If it's not 6, I think it's 7. I really think this could be a long, tougher than anyone would think series. I think this team's no joke. I kind of, it's kind of scary to me that the Phillies are starting at home, believe it or not, because pressure's kind of on the Phillies now in these
pressure is
games,
on the Phillies. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas they usually start on the road, and it's you take 1 road game, and now they gotta start out, and they gotta make sure they win both of these games. And they might not, but they could definitely go into Arizona and win. I'm not saying that they couldn't do that, but that's going to elongate the series if they come in and they win these first 2 games. Realistically, they could end it early. For some reason, I think they might drop one of these first 2 games.
I think they might lose game 1, honestly.
They could. They honestly could.
And I think that's an important game for them to win. But I actually think if they're going to lose a game, they're going to lose game 1. Again, I'm still picking 5, but that might be the game that they lose, and then they might win 4 straight after that. I just think that Gallen comes out pumped up, and that's the tougher the 2 pitchers that we're talking about here. They're home, like you said, he's from here, so maybe that's a little extra motivation for him. So yeah, I mean, if they win game 1, I think I don't want to say, hey, the series is over if they win game 1, but like I said earlier, I mean, it just comes down to winning at least one of these starts against Gallen and hoping that he doesn't have to pitch game 7.
So here's your completely meaningless stat of the day, because this is 100+ years worth of possible games involved. The Phillies have never won a series in which they lost game 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It
doesn't make it. I mean, mind you, other than last year, there aren't any other series that would really apply to this. But they've never lost a series where they've lost. They've never won a series where they lost game 1, and they've only won one series where they were ever behind in the series. That was the '80 NLCS with Houston when they were down 2-1.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I just can't see Arizona shutting down the bats like they did against the Dodgers and Freeman and Betts.
Oh, I can see Gallen doing it. I can see Gallen doing it.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought they shut down Freeman and Betts. I mean, Betts never quite got it back on track after he fouled the ball off his foot, right, or whatever it was. He had that. Yeah. But Freeman was going to be what, 3rd in MVP? Like
Dodgers lineup's no joke. Their pitching staff is bad. Yeah, that's why I thought they were vulnerable. Their lineup is no joke. There's no joke. I fear Gallen. I fear Gallen more than Kelly. I think Kelly's a good pitcher, but I think they could get to him. Gallen could throw, like, he's not really a fireballer. He's going to be throwing junk. I don't know.
I mean, and look, as somebody that followed him very closely this year, he had a nice dip in the second half, but had a couple good start, obviously the playoffs, and now at the very end of the year. So maybe he's coming back up, but he can certainly give the runs up, and he can have a one bad inning, like sort of like Nola sometimes, and then that's that. But he's on the right way as far as the curve for how they want to play. And I mean, sometimes look, I don't know if the makeup is the same, and they certainly didn't get in the playoffs the same way, but sometimes the team gets hot. I mean, look, Colorado ran through, us and who was it, Arizona that year in 07 when they went 7-0 to get, Arizona really backed into the playoffs because they lost how many of their last games, but because the Cubs and Reds kept losing, they got in, and, Florida eventually jumped them. So they're not winning 23 out of 24 or whatever the Rockies were on coming in. But sometimes you just get a team like that puts that kind of run together. And I mean, I don't know what I didn't check the odds on the series, but I mean, it's not.
Phillies are heavy.
I mean, if I think it's going to go 7 games, then how can I not say it would be a complete shocker if Arizona won? Like, it wouldn't complete shock me, but I mean, I think it's a closer matchup than probably the odds are saying.
All right, we're running a little long here, so let's do a quick round the horn, Houston versus Texas prediction, and then we'll kind of get started on our football talk. I'll start with Chalky, real quick. What do you think?
I mean, I'll stick with Houston, but Texas is almost like Arizona. They struggled that last week, almost didn't make it, and then they won 5 in a row. So, and in big fashion in some of those games. So, I'll stick with Houston, but again, not surprised if Texas gets there.
Meeker?
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with Texas. I mean, we predicted that the other day. Bats are hot. Scherzer could possibly pitch in this series now, I'm hearing. I mean, that might be a big difference. I don't know how much length he can give him, but it's hard to pick against the Astros, but at the same time, I think, this could be Texas's year, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to take Texas to win in 7 games.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas also. I think it'll be a tough series. I think it'll be a long series, and hopefully it's a long series because we don't want, whoever, obviously we all think the Phillies are going to win, so we don't want them setting their rotation and everything else for the next series, whoever wins. So I'm going to go Texas. And I kind of would prefer to play Texas if I were the Phillies because Houston's got that experience. They've proven they could come here and win and stuff. So I think it'll be Texas, and I hope it's Texas.
Houston, they would get home field though.
The Phillies would get home field, not against Texas.
Against Houston, not against Texas.
They had the same. They all had the same record, but the Phillies won the season series against Houston. They got swept at Texas in that first series, so Texas would get home field over the Phillies by that.
When did they do away with the All-Star game?
Oh, years ago. I don't know how long, but it's been a while. Okay. It's strictly record now, and since even though Houston won their division, they don't get priority over the Phillies being a wild card. It's head to head because everybody plays everybody now.
Interesting. Well, we'll see.
Manager too. That's another piece.
Bochy, yeah.
Both teams have good managers, but Phillies don't do so well against Bochy.
Yeah.
But
all right, Chalky, you want to give a quick update? We did do a draft.
So as Jason mentioned, two of us have of the 4 teams remaining. They're all accounted for. I still have the Phillies and Houston. Jason has Texas and Arizona remaining. In the last round, Jason lost the Dodgers and Baltimore. Tommy lost the Twins, and Rays went out earlier. Those are the only teams I think he had in the playoffs. And then Meeker lost Atlanta.
Great.
So Jason was the only one that got all 4 of his teams into the playoffs. The rest of us had at least one team that missed. And I guess St. Louis was not so bad of a pick after all because it threw some people off. But I don't know.
So to me, I think it seems like Chalky's kind of in the driver's seat here. So Chalky, I would start thinking about where you want us to take you to dinner.
We'll see. I just wish I was the only one that correctly picked the 4 winners of the series. I wish we would have did a parlay because I was about 24-1.
That's true. You did
for those at the series price to get that right. And who would have thought?
Got to start betting what we say on here, man. We have some good predictions.
Well, I bet my NFL, as if we went through the segue, I bet my NFL division winners, but I think a couple of them are already dead in the water. So that 8-way parlay is probably not going to hit.
Yeah,
neither is mine. No.
Well, speaking of NFL, let's jump into it. I guess we'll start with the Eagles game. Eagles game last week versus the Rams. So to me, I think the Eagles probably played their best game of the year, and especially in the second half. I think before halftime, that touchdown was kind of huge. Like, that really changed the momentum of the game there. And the Rams couldn't stop Goddard. And Stafford actually picked them apart in the first half, but whatever adjustments were made after halftime, I think the Eagles kind of controlled the ball and the clock after halftime. Stafford was not as good after half. Hurts played well. I think he played a good game, and I think that was their best game of the year. Chalky, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, overall, best game of the year, even if it wasn't their biggest win in terms of points or most points put on the board. I think it was last week in our discussion, and Jason, I think you said as somebody who's supposed to be a top 3 MVP is Hurts that player right now. I said not so far. This was 2022 Jalen Hurts. He had the one interception,
he was running,
which wasn't, it was miscommunication, but it was in the end zone, so it wasn't bad, like in a bad spot, although you took points off the board. But I mean, we said it. How do you watch that game and not think either A, he had some sort of nagging injury that was bothering him, or B, they weren't intentionally running him in the same plays or having him run with the same style. I mean, it was almost like he was running with a purpose and he was putting his head down, and it was like last year, and it just, you would never thought the first 4 games would have produced this game. So it's almost like they flipped the switch. It was like, okay, this is how we're doing it this time. And he wasn't tentative with the ball. He wasn't he wasn't scared to take a hit. He had a couple 3rd down conversions where he would just put his head down and bounced off of guys, and he wasn't doing any of that in the first 4 games. The closest we saw was, I think, at the 25-yard scramble late in the Washington game, right? Maybe that showed him he can still do it, and now he's more open to it. I don't know, but they grounded it down. There wasn't even in the second half, and it was a 1-score game. I was never really worried that they weren't going to win the game because they just, with that late touchdown, and then the defense, they made an adjustment cover in the middle of the field, and Rams still had some shots. But they added some pressure, and Stafford missed 1 or 2 of them because he had to get the ball out, and he's out unfortunately this week. But Jalen Carter just continues to dominate people, and then you can't block Hassan Reddick with anybody but an offensive lineman, and that killed them in that one of those last series. And the O-line found a way to neutralize Aaron Donald. So, he was very
quiet.
good, very good win overall.
Yeah, Meeker, what do you think?
He's always been quiet against the Eagles, right? He's never really had a sack or.
Yeah, I thought that would have been the week, but still no sacks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add from what you guys said. True. It was vintage Hurts in this game. They let him loose. He ran with purpose, like you said. Made a lot of nice throws. That key drive at the end of the first half was big, and that catch by Brown. They had some timely sacks in the game between Carter and 2 by Reddick in the second half. The big play that I think it's a play that actually didn't happen, so to speak, is the one that I thought the Rams missed on, if you remember, was the throw to Atwell that Stafford missed right in the center of the field. There was no one near him. He catches that, he's gone for a touchdown, and he just missed him. And that was a big non-play, I guess you would call it. They missed on that could have made the game closer. But, the second half, Eagles dominated. They ran well. They passed well. They were 13 of 18 on third downs. Controlled the time possession, won the game, rather easily, even though it was a pretty close game in the first half.
All right. So what are our thoughts on this week versus the Jets? I will start with you, Meeker.
Well, let's see. The Jets are 0-12 against the Eagles all time. Jets have never beaten the Eagles. They come in with the 29th, and I was actually surprised to see this, the 29th ranked rush defense in the league. And what did the Eagles do well? They run the ball well. So I don't think that's a really good matchup for the Jets. Middle of the road in defense against the pass. Obviously, they have a pretty decent secondary. I just think that the Jets they don't match up very well. They're weak, the Eagles are strong. And, you got Zach Wilson out there, who I know has played a little better in the last couple of games. But they should be able to run like they have in the last 4 or 5 games. They should be able to control the clock like they have in the last 4 or 5 games. They should be able to get to Wilson, force him to throw a pick or two. I think it's going to be a rather easy win. I'm going to go 26-13 Eagles and go to 6-0.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a weather game, so there's going to be wind. There might not be rain, but there's going to be a lot of wind. And I agree with you, Meeker. I think this is a matchup nightmare for the Jets because the Jets want to run the ball, and the Eagles shut down the run. Now, without Carter, that might change things, but I still think that they're going to shut down the run because the threat of the pass is not going to be there, at least the pass downfield because of the wind, right? I tell people all the time, people hear rain and then they're like, that's going to cause issues. Rain doesn't cause issues. Rain actually helps passing because the receivers know where they're going. The D-backs don't know where they're going. Right. And, it's harder to kind of maneuver. But wind, that does affect passing. So, I think even though Wilson's looked better, he's still not very good. And, the Jets' defense has been a disappointment so far this year, and if you look at stats, they do not stop tight ends. So I think Goddard is going to have another big week this week. He should be able to exploit them. They give up a ton of touchdowns to tight ends. So, again, the injury concerns is not only Carter, but I think Slay is also out. Yep. Is that correct? Slay's not going to play. So it might not matter as much if there's not a lot of downfield passing, but it's still, still you'd rather have Slay in the game. And Meeker, I'm sorry, your prediction was, what was your score?
26-13.
26-13. I have 13 as well. I have 24-13, and believe it or not, Tommy has 20-13. So there's a lot of 13s that we think the Jets are going to score. Chalky.
And today is Friday the 13th.
You going to give us another 13 or what?
Yes, I think the Jets are going to score 13, but I have to figure out what my Eagles score is because I think I have
one of those. Use 24, 20, or 26.
No, yeah, all right. So I'll figure it out by the end of this. So, I you look at the line and I'm like, maybe this will end up being like a 1-score game or something. Like they have the kind of defense in the passing game, at least, that might give Hurts some trouble. But yeah, they're down 3 cornerbacks, I think. And Gardner is questionable. He left the game last week, came back, but now he's questionable with an illness of some sort. So if he somehow doesn't play, they're down their top 4 cornerbacks. So, I don't. One of us could probably throw in the wind and still complete some passes against whatever lineup they're going to put out there. I don't know. But the Eagles' defensive line against the Jets O-line, whether they're run or pass, and it should be a mismatch because they're down a bunch of guys as well. And Dean coming back, so hopefully he can make some plays and negate Hall. I think the Eagles have the top rushing defense in the league now. They haven't. There's only one. They've only allowed more than 100 yards for a team in one game, and that was against Washington when Howell had a couple of those scrambles, ended up with 40 yards, and I think it was like 105 yards, whatever they gave up overall. So they've been able to, even though they're not blowing teams out, they're still shutting backs down. And even with Slay out, I mean, Wilson is really good. Garrett Wilson. And he can maybe make some plays because he won't have Slay on him. But the Eagles should get a couple turnovers and a couple easy scores that way. I'll go 29-13 Eagles.
29-13. All right. So real quick before we start jumping into stats, let's do a quick roundtable on top 5 NFL teams. Chalky, give me your top 5 real fast.
I mean, I'll put San Francisco in a tier by itself, but I'd say San Francisco. And then there you got Eagles, Chiefs. I guess you got to put the Lions in there. And I probably still have Bills top 5, even though they didn't play well to our benefit last week. But they've got some pretty decent next-gen stats still, which was kind of surprised me. But yeah, I don't know. There's nobody else that I'm seeing that's anywhere close to most of those teams. So I guess that's my top 5.
Yeah, I'll jump in with.
I'm sorry, I didn't throw Miami in there. So Miami would be the other team. I put Miami over the Bills, so they're still in the conversation. Yeah. So
yeah. So for me, San Fran, like I said in the beginning, that Brock Purdy looks like he's a pretty good quarterback, playing pretty well. I'm kind of like you, Chalky. I think they're just in their own universe right now. I guess you have to go Eagles second. And then Chiefs third. I'll go Miami fourth, and then I'm gonna cop out here. I'm gonna tie with Buffalo and Detroit for fifth because I don't know which one to put over each other. I'm not sure, so that's a cop out for me. But Meeker.
Yeah, I have the same order. I flipped with San Fran over the Eagles last pod when you had that same question. I had the Eagles first, but I'm going to go San Fran first. They're playing great complimentary football. I can't deny the fact that Brock Purdy is much better than I thought he was.
He kind of reminds me a little of Breeze, believe it or not. Like his accuracy, his anticipation, he kind of plays a Drew Brees type game to me.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't throw as like the more longer outs, that Brees would throw.
He leads the league in yardage, and I forget what it is, like air passes through the air. He leads the league. You might not think he throws deep, but he does.
Yeah, I mean, they're a really talented team on both sides of the ball, and there's nothing I can say about it. And I'm a San Fran hater, but they're the first. They're number one for me. The Eagles second. Kansas City again, not really a impressive win last night, but nonetheless, they're winning. And
that was a weather game too, though. You can't kill them on that game. You come throw the ball. Come throw the ball, and they have Mahomes.
He threw for 300 yards, but in the end, I mean, they're obviously a really good team. They're the Super Bowl champs. Miami, I have fourth, and I've elevated Detroit to fifth. I'm between Detroit, Jacksonville, Buffalo, as the fifth team there.
Jacksonville's got to show me more. They got to show me more.
They had an impressive win against Buffalo, and then Detroit fifth. Yeah, so I'm going to take Detroit fifth.
Okay. All right, so it's that time of the week where we will go over week stats. And we will start with the league stats. So last week, over under, once again, under dominated. There were 5 over games and 9 under. There were only 14 games last week. So for the year, over is 33 and under is 44. So under is 57% so far, which to me kind of the same story as it was last year. Public over-under. Public kind of fell back this week. They were only 5-9 with their over-under picks. So they're still 42-35 for the year. Once again, though, the public with the spread. Public was 10-4. So the public is now 49-27 on the year against the spread, 64%. I mean, that's just unheard of. It is just unheard of. And I think one of these weeks, the public is just going to get annihilated, and it's going to be soon. So anyway, so let's move on to our weekly stats. So the podcast finally redeemed itself last week. So the week before we went 2-10, which is nothing to brag about. But this week we went 9-3. So we kind of made a nice comeback. I'll start with myself. I went 3-0. So I've been struggling. I was 1-2 like 3 straight weeks. So now I'm 3-0 again. I did win the Jacksonville game as my best bet. I had the Chiefs-Vikings under. And then I also won with the Falcons. So Falcons a little hairy because when we did the bet, I was only given 1.5. When the game started, I believe the line moved to 2.5. So I benefited there. But it is what it is. Tommy lost the week before because of line move. I won, and Tommy also won this week because of line move. So I was 3-0. Tommy went 1-2. His best bet was the Giants. That was a loss. Game 2 was the Ravens, was a loss. And then he won the Falcons game like me. So he went 1-2. Chalky, you were 2-1. You hit your best bet with the Jaguars. We both had the same best bet. You had the Colts money line, but then you did lose the Rams versus the Eagles. And then, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in the history of the Broad Street Hustle podcast,
not the first time,
in the now 23 regular season weeks that we have done 3 picks per week,
it's not the first time.
Chris Meeker, inexplicably, unbelievably, finally went 3-0.
No, I went 3-0 towards the end of last season. I think twice. Yes, I did. Look it up.
So,
you just wanted to be well, even though
3-0. So Meeker wins with his best bet, which was Raiders and Packers under. He also won with his Joe Public Dolphins pick, and then he hit the Texans and Falcons under. So let's go to the stats for the season. So for the season, I am now 9-6. I'm 60%. Profit of $215. ROI is 14%. Tommy's 5-10, 33%. He's got a loss of $450. He's negative 30% ROI. Chalky 7-8 with a 47% win percentage, $137 loss, minus 9% ROI. And then Meeker is up to 7-8, 47% win percentage, minus $161, minus 11% ROI. For the year, the pod is now 28-32. 47% win percentage, minus $533, minus 8.9% ROI. Our best bets for the year, I'm 2-3. Tommy's 1-4, and you two guys are still doing well at your best bets. You're 3-2, so we're 9-11 on the pod. And our lifetime pod record, best bets, I'm 14-8. Tommy's 11-9. Chalky 12-10. Meeker's, that's like 3 in a row, I think, Meeker, right? You're 9-13 now. So we're 46-40 lifetime on the pod. We're positive at 53%. And I'll close with our all-time records. I am 42-25, 63% win percentage, a profit of $1,308, 19% ROI. Tommy's 33-28, 54% win percentage, $415 profit, 7% ROI. Chalky 31-37, 46% win percentage, minus $847 loss, minus 12% ROI. Meeker's 30-36, 45% win percentage, minus $850 or $850. Sorry, I can't read. $880 loss and minus 13% ROI. So that's it. So now let us move to our picks for this week. and I will start with Mr. Chalk.
All right. So my top pick is going to be under in the Arizona Rams game. That's under 49 minus 112. Rams offense will probably play a little better, I would think, but the Cardinals look like a team that might struggle. So I'm not expecting a shootout. Hopefully not a shootout. So under 49 at minus 112. My second pick is going to be the Raiders minus. Well, DraftKings is sitting at -3, but that is an adjusted line. I just scrolled past it, of course. -3, that's -102. New England's getting a lot of support early, and I don't know. They're not. I think it's a generous line from the Raiders, but they're hitting the other side. So I'll be against the public on this and go -3, 102, and then. My third pick, which is the notorious never wins pick, I'm going to take the Cowboys -2.5. That's -110, and that's more of just that's a line pick. They got a lot going against them in that they just got blown out. Back out in California again. I don't know if they stayed out there for the week, but they're talking about they need to change this or that, and they're coming out as a favorite when I thought might have been closer to a pick'em game, and the Chargers are getting bet right now, but Dallas opened the favorite and they've stayed there. So I guess people agreed with me that the Chargers should be getting less. So I'll take Dallas -2.5.
So can I throw in, Chalky, that by far the most profitable bet of any pick that we make on this podcast is fading your third pick?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'd be a profitable handicapper if we have to make 3 picks. So
it's really crazy.
Yeah.
It's like if you look at the stats, he's positive in both of his other picks.
So know your limits.
Know
your limits, folks. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes,
But
yes. All right, Meeker, what do you got?
So my first pick is going to be over in the Minnesota-Chicago game. That's over 43 -112. I know Jefferson's out, and that's going to hurt Minnesota's offense, but neither one of these teams play good defense, and I think 43 is a little bit of a low line there.
Weather.
I'm going to say, is that a weather game? Because that's dropped a lot,
Weather.
I know, but Jefferson will be part of it. But
Wind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Justin Fields likes to run the ball, so the wind's not going to affect him running.
Yeah, but if they know that they're not throwing, they're going to have 9 guys up at the line for Justin Fields. But go ahead, Meeker. I'm sorry. I digress.
We're sticking with it. Over 43 in Minnesota, Chicago. That's a -112 line. I'm going to take.
Chalky, audit this, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to. Over 43 is -112. That's correct.
All right.
Second pick's going to be Atlanta, -2.5 against Washington. That's also -112. Washington's rush defense is not very good. Atlanta's rush offense is pretty good. And although I'm not a Desmond Ridder fan, I mean, at least he played, I would say, average last week.
I have a stat on that. Believe it or not, Desmond Ridder has never in his career lost a home game, college or pro.
Yeah, I've heard that they were talking about that last week, right? Because they were home last week. He's never lost a game at home. I'm going to take him -2.5. Washington's a team on the definitely, sinking week by week. Atlanta is playing pretty good football, so I want to take Atlanta -2.5. And my third and final pick will be under in the Jacksonville-Indianapolis game. That's under 44 -110. Jacksonville's defense has been playing pretty good. Indy's keeping games close defensively, so I think it might be one of those lower scoring in the teens, the low 20s. So 44 is a little bit of a high mark there. I'm going to take under in that game.
Chalky's at.
That's correct.
110.
Yep, 44, 110.
Okay. All right, so I'll give you Tommy's picks. Tommy's top pick is going to be Carolina +14 at -110. His second pick is the Saints -1.5 at -108. And his third pick will be Jacksonville. He said -4.5. I believe it moved to 4 now.
Yeah, it's currently -4, -108.
Yeah, so he'll have to get 4 there. All right, and I will move to myself. My top pick is going to be Tampa Bay +3, and this is a a Joe Pro versus Joe game, I think. Big time. Seems like the Joes love the Lions this week.
I almost made them my money line as a third pick, taking the Tampa on the money line. But...
Tampa Bay. Yeah, I really like Tampa Bay this week. So I think their defense is going to give Goff some trouble. My second pick will be under in the Saints-Texans game. That's under 42. The Saints are on like an insane, sure Meeker knows this, like under run.
Yeah.
So I think their defense is actually gonna give Stroud trouble. And the Saints are better on the road than home for some reason. So while I'm not picking the Saints as one of my picks, I think that's gonna be a low scoring game. And then my final pick is going to be the Ravens -4.5, -110. I heard some crazy stuff where like Harbaugh actually hired assistant coaches specifically for this London game to like kind of figure out stuff, travel wise and stuff. So I think they're really, and plus they're bouncing back from the bad loss against the Steelers. I really like the Ravens this week. And I do have a bet, which I told you guys, just to kind of inform everybody, we've been doing a touchdown parlay each week. We each pick a guy, and we try to hit a touchdown parlay. My guy this week is going to be Zay Flowers. Tennessee's awful against wide receivers, and I really think that he's going to score a touchdown this week. A couple other guys I do like this week are Ridley for a touchdown. I like Goddard. The Jets can't stop tight ends. I think Goddard's going to score again. And I like CD Lamb on Monday night. The Chargers are bad against wide receivers, so I think he's going to get in. You guys have any props to throw out, or if you don't,
I think
no
Hurts
problem.
gets in.
Hurts, yeah,
I
could see that.
Does, but it's
-125. So,
it's chalk.
Like you said, the weather could be a factor, but I was thinking Devontae Smith gets back in +180 this week.
He could. He's been pretty absent the last couple of weeks. Yeah. All right, so
give you one more prop before we go. I always like to bet this prop, and I won it one time, and paid off pretty well. So to pick the exacta when it comes to a series, and I said earlier, I think the one game the Phillies can lose is Game 1, and I'm going to pick them to lose Game 1, win 4 straight. And that's at +1900. I kind of like that bet. I'm definitely going to place that bet. And I don't hope that they lose Game 1, but if they do, at least I'll have a good shot at winning some money.
All right, I like it. All right, great. So that's going to conclude episode 76 of Broad Street Hustle. Next week, we will not only provide a Phillies update and handicap Week 7 of the NFL, but we're also going to throw in a short NBA season preview, because that's right around the corner, believe it or not, the NBA season. We're going to include some prop bets and predictions. And I do have a note that we were going to plan on returning to our regularly scheduled night for the podcast, but I believe we're going to try and do it a day earlier. So we might have it out earlier next week. We might do a Wednesday night podcast, but no later than Thursday. So just stay tuned for that. But that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for you guys for joining, Chalky and Meeker, and we will see you next week.
Go Phils.
Take care.